Hi everyone, welcome back to Nature at Home. My name is Zoe and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite native animals here in New York, and that is the opossum. So many of you have seen opossums around. They're a little bit bigger than your average house cat. They're white and really fluffy with a little bit of gray mixed into their fur. They have really long, naked, bare tail. They've got cute little naked ears, and they are North America's only marsupial, meaning that they have a pouch. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So opossums we found all over the eastern United States, typically around farmlands, wooded areas, and residential areas. And they'll make a home out of pretty much anywhere they can find that they find comfortable. So whether that be other animals' dens, holes in logs and fallen trees, haystacks, sometimes people's homes or sheds if they can get into them because it's nice and warm and safe from the outside world. And they're one of the few mammals that doesn't have a permanent home. They wander around a lot, just looking for places that they find comfortable and that have food, so they don't typically stay in one area. They'll travel and move around as they see fit. Now when they find an area they want to camp out in, they'll build themselves a little den typically, and they'll do this by using their tail. And so we mentioned earlier they do have this really long, weird, naked looking tail. Their tail is super important and super cool because it's actually what we call a prehensile tail, meaning that they can use their tail like a monkey can. So they'll actually wrap their tail around leaves, sticks, hay, grasses, whatever they can find to build their den. They'll wrap their tail around that and carry it with them to wherever they're going to build, and then they'll use that to help make a little nest for themselves. So opossums are what we call opportunistic omnivores, meaning they eat a little bit of everything. They'll eat whatever they can find for the day. They'll eat vegetation, they'll eat bugs, they'll eat frogs and toads, sometimes snakes or lizards. They'll eat any kind of fruit. They'll eat dead plants and rotting things. They'll eat dead animals. And so they'll eat anything. They're really not picky at all. They're the best animal to invite to your dinner party because they'll eat whatever you're serving. Now, opossums are, in my opinion, one of the most misunderstood animals. A lot of people don't like opossums for several reasons. One of which being that a lot of times when people see them it's because they're in their backyard or they're raiding their garbage. Well, if you think about it this way, you're throwing out all this leftover food. That's free food for an opossum. It doesn't have to go far, it doesn't have to work hard. So really the opossum's just looking out for itself and grabbing a quick bite to eat. They're actually doing us a huge favor. So one of the huge dangers to us up here are ticks. You walk out in the woods and you might come back with tons of ticks on you, and ticks carry Lyme disease, so ticks can be very dangerous for us. Thankfully, ticks are one of an opossum's favorite foods. And one opossum in one season can eat roughly 5,000 ticks. They eat about 95% of the ticks that they come across when they're crawling around out in the wild. So we would have a lot more ticks than we already do if it wasn't for opossums. So if you find an opossum in your backyard, you're very lucky because that opossum's eating your ticks for you. They also eat other pests like cockroaches, mice, and rats that might carry diseases, so they're very helpful to have around. Their breeding season is late January through late March and mid-May to early July, and most females will produce 2 litters, sometimes a third. Their gestation period is only about 12 to 13 days, and their young are born at an early stage of development. Now we mentioned earlier that the opossum is North America's only marsupial and that they have a pouch. So when these babies are born at about 13 days, what happens is they will crawl up into the mother's pouch and then they will finish developing there. So when they're born, they're only about the size of a little honeybee, and that little honeybee will remain in that pouch for about 60 to 65 days while they finish developing. After that, they'll crawl out of the pouch and they'll hang out with mom. So when mom goes out to look for food, you'll see opossums attached around her back. Those are all her baby opossums that have just come out of the pouch and they're not quite ready to go off on their own yet. So mom will carry them around on her back. And then when they get a little bit older, they'll walk around with her before going off on their own. and on average they'll have about 6 to 9 babies. So although they have a very short lifespan of only about 1 to 2 years, they do produce quite frequently. So that's why the opossum, even having a short lifespan, isn't threatened or endangered in the wild, because they are very successful when it comes to reproduction. Predators to the opossum include large raptors, like the great horned owl, bobcats, foxes, coyotes, and other mammals. But another huge danger to the opossum are collisions with vehicles out in the road. Because like we mentioned earlier, opossums love to eat dead things, and the best place to find dead animals is on the side of the roadkill. Unfortunately, opossums are very slow moving animals. They really don't move very fast. So if a car is coming, they're not going to be able to get out of the way. However, as slow as they are on land, they're excellent climbers, and they love to climb trees. And they're able to do this because of that prehensile tail. That tail acts almost like a fifth hand for them, so when they're climbing, that tail will be wrapped around a branch. They also have opposable thumbs, just like we do, so they're able to grip onto branches when they're climbing. It's pretty cool. Now, you probably won't see opossums much during the day because they are nocturnal. Not only are they nocturnal, but they sleep a lot. On average, they're awake during the day maybe for about 4 hours-ish. The rest of the time, they're sleeping. They love to sleep. Now, just like most of us, they're much more active in the spring and summer when it's warm. In the winter, when it's really cold, they like to hide out in their den. However, they don't hibernate. So winter is a very, very tough time for opossums. A lot of them suffer from frostbite because they have naked tails that aren't covered in fur, and their ears aren't covered in fur, and they're not protected. So possums in the wild look a little rough because they suffer from things like frostbite. Now, one more thing that people are really concerned about with opossums is rabies. They think if an opossum's in their backyard, it might have rabies, and it could give it to their dogs or their cats. Opossums are actually very resistant to diseases like rabies because their body temperature is much too low for that disease to replicate within their body. So it's very, very rare that you'll ever see an opossum with a disease like rabies. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is something a lot of people know about possums. It's probably the most well-known opossum fact, and that is that they play dead. And that's not a myth. That is actually true. They do play dead. However, it's a little different than what you might be thinking. A lot of you have dogs that know how to play dead. It's a little different for an opossum when they play dead. They're not really faking it. What happens is that when a predator is nearby or something startles them, their body temporarily goes into shock and they more or less pass out and faint. So they are completely unconscious. This can last for only a few minutes, or it can last for a few hours, and during this time, their body's completely limp, they don't really know what's going on, and they don't feel anything. So a predator could be messing with their body or biting them, and the opossum would have no reaction. It wouldn't really know what's going on. Now, during this, not only is their body limp and they look dead, but they can release an odor that smells like they're dead too. So they look the part and they smell the part. As helpful as this is for an opossum to avoid getting eaten by a predator, it can sometimes not work out in their favor. Sometimes people will see a dead opossum or an opossum playing dead, and they might bury it, even though it's still alive, it's just playing dead. Or sometimes if it happens in the road, say they're eating roadkill and a car comes and it scares them and they play dead, a car could hit them because it looks like it's a dead opossum on the side of the road. So it can be quite dangerous for opossums to play dead, as helpful as it is. Alright, so I hope you learned a lot about opossums today, and maybe you have a little more appreciation for them now than you may have before, knowing all these things about them. And I'd like to thank the New York Power Authority for funding the Nature Center and all of our programs. And don't forget to check out our daily links and downloads on Facebook, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. for another video. Bye!